Hello and welcome into another edition of the Potbelly Pigskin Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Liam. His name is Graham. Unfortunately, we don't have Zach again tonight. But hey, you know what? We're still here, so that's the best we can do for right now. Now we are going to touch on some news here. There has been a pretty decent amount of information that's come out since yesterday. Um, First and foremost, DeAndre Hopkins is going to be out for the rest of the season. He has a sprained knee, and they're not expecting him back until playoffs. That's a big one. Another one, Javonte Williams was limited with a knee issue on Wednesday, so that's something to keep an eye on. George Kittle was limited with a knee injury. I feel like I'm talking about like my whole entire team here. George Kittle was limited with a knee injury. Keenan Allen was participating. Austin Eckler is practicing again on Wednesday. The Rams shut down their facility, so that's a concern. Jalen Hurts is currently has a high ankle sprain. Other than that, I mean, it is a whole lot of COVID related news. That's like I could go through it all, but honestly, I think I'm gonna do a very vague but covers the whole base statement. Pay attention to your lineup this week because who knows what's going to happen with COVID issues, and there are so many. There's too many to count right now. So just make sure you're keeping an eye on it. That's really all I can say. So, did you have anything to add news-wise there?
No, just yeah, good luck to everyone, and hopefully you have enough players to start.
Yeah, no kidding. Be active on the waiver wire. All right, so we are going to get started with matchups tonight. Just looking at the first matchup, we ended off with the Jets in Miami last night. So if you don't hear them today, obviously they're on yesterday's show. But we're going to start with Dallas against the Giants of New York. Looking at the Dallas side of the ball, the Giants are allowing the 14th most points to the quarterback, the 8th most to the running back, the 5th most to the wide receiver, and the 20th most to the tight end.
Yeah, so it's pretty bleak these days in New York. I have heard that
Remember, we're looking at
Danny.
Dallas first. It was New
Oh,
York's. Yeah,
Dallas. Yes, of course. Uh,
I know.
things have
It
been
always
pretty
throws us through a
bleak.
loop.
Things have been pretty bleak lately in Dallas as well, although certainly not as bleak as in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, this week, I've heard Pollard's supposed to be back, which diminishes Zeke a bit,
Yeah.
who has kind of diminished himself as well of late. I think this is still a plus enough matchup where it's hard to not think Dallas should get up early and keep it. So I think Zeke's still a decent start. I think Pollard is also a decent flex just for the fact that if they are up early, there should be a healthy amount of carries for both of them. Uh, Outside of that, I'm off the Schultz train. He's just not getting targeted enough to be really relevant at this point. And I think you can find someone who's got more touchdown upside. Uh, but I think Dak's worth starting. Don't be too excited about him. He is slumping pretty good, but he's he's still a talented quarterback who's got a great offense. Even if he and Zeke are slumping a bit, I think CeeDee Lamb you can go ahead and roll, and Cooper could get you. He's got such a great ceiling. I think it's hard not to start Cooper week after week.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement with you there, just in regards to where the starts are pretty obvious for Dallas. But yeah, Cooper, and CD both are on my radar as well. I think they're both very good starts this week. So let's look at the Giants side of the ball. Dallas is allowing the 25th most points to the quarterback, the 30th most to the running back, 7th most to the wide receiver, and 13th most to the tight end.
So I've heard Danny Dimes is expected to be back this week, which means that there should be a lot more turnovers by New York. But probably a little more opportunity for some of their offensive weapons.
Weapons.
Saquon, I don't know that you really want to start him right now. Dallas is a fantastic rush defense, and Saquon has been less than stellar against some very unfantastic rush defenses. So I think that if you have him, if you invested in him, if you don't have a lot of options, go ahead and roll him out. But I wouldn't expect the moon from him this week. I don't think you're expecting the moon from him any week, but very tempered expectations in this one. Very touchdown dependent. Outside of that, it's hard to really start a Giants wide receiver. Shepard or Galladay could conceivably give you some decent results this week, especially with Dimes back. I think Ingram's a mediocre start as well, just because tight end is so bleak. But yeah, if you're relying on the Giants to do things, that sucks.
Yeah, I feel sorry for you. I do have a little bit of faith in Galladay. If I'm putting my money on a wide receiver in New York this week, it is Galladay for me. And I'm a little bit more excited to start him this week than I have been previously. So he's a very decent. I'll say good. He's a good flex option this week, in my opinion. But another thing, start the Dallas defense, because Daniel Jones is going to be good for at least 2 turnovers in this game. So,
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next matchup. We got the NFC East is just playing each other this week. So we've got Washington against Philadelphia in the next matchup. So looking at the Washington side of the ball, Philly is allowing the 13th most points to the quarterback, 14th most points to the running back, 30th most points to the wide receiver, and most points to the tight end. Now, Taylor Heineke had a really bad week last week. It is also tough to say because Washington's one of those teams that did close their facilities too. So with the COVID issues. So, I mean, that is something I'm going to talk. We're going to go through the show and we're just going to talk about every player, like every single game is happening this weekend and there's no issues. So I'm just going to get that out of the way first. But Taylor Heineke had a bad game last week. I think I'm off the Taylor Heineke bandwagon, as tough
Finally.
as it is to say. Antonio Gibson was not used a lot last week. This is a half decent matchup against the Eagles. He's going to be a good volume play because McKissick's probably still going to be out, and even if he is back, I think it's going to be in a limited role. McLaurin, he's listed as questionable, but I mean, he had a concussion and was ruled out pretty quick in last week's game, and I don't think he's cleared the concussion protocol yet. Yeah, he didn't clear it. He's still not practicing. So, I mean, even if he's in, I honestly would be benching McLaurin this week because if he's in, he's playing Darius. Like, he's gonna get the Slay matchup.
Yeah.
Tight end for Washington, it's gonna be Ricky Seals-Jones, and it's a really good matchup. So when you were talking about there's better options to stream at the tight end position, this would be one of them, in my opinion.
Yeah. Absolutely agree with you. Seals-Jones is Heineke's throwing him the ball, so you never know what the hell's going to happen. But it's a fantastic matchup, in a matchup where they're probably going to end up having to throw it to win it. So I think you can definitely do a hell of a lot worse than Seals-Jones this week.
Yeah.
Like McLaurin.
All right, let's go over to the Philly side of the ball. Washington's allowing the most points to the quarterback, the 23rd most points to the running back, the 3rd most points to the wide receiver, and the 19th most points to the tight end. This looks on paper to be a fantastic matchup for Jalen Hurts. But the problem is a lot of the points that you get from Jalen Hurts come from running the football. He has an ankle injury, so that is definitely going to limit him. Even saying that, I'm still playing Jalen Hurts this week if he's in. Like it's a bad defense. They allow a lot of points to the quarterback. Hurts is a good start this week. Looking at the running backs, I tend to lean Sanders, but I don't think it's a great matchup, especially because Washington started to get a lot better on defense against the run over time. So I really think Sanders hasn't shown you much this year, even though it's 23rd against the running back. To me, this is a bench Sanders kind of situation. I'm not looking to flex Scott. I'm not looking to. I don't think Jordan Howard's even back. He's questionable, but I'm not looking to play either one of them either. Find a different running back, in my opinion. Like you can go elsewhere this week. Like I'd rather play one of the Houston running backs over the Philly running backs in this game. Wide receiver for Philly, Devonta Smith. This is one of those weeks where I think you are happy to have him and be putting him in your lineup because this is a really good matchup. And with the fact that Philly's going to be ineffective running the ball this week, they're going to be throwing. I think it's going to be a pass-heavy game on both sides of the ball. And I think it's going to be a lot closer of a matchup than anyone's anticipating. So I think there's going to be a lot of passing. So I think that leans to Smith being a good start. And I'm probably not looking at any other wide receiver. I'd probably just be looking at Smith, and I'll probably start Goddard because of the tight end landscape.
Yeah, I'm not a huge Goddard fan, but I think this is a good enough game that you could probably roll him out with tempered expectations. But yeah, I think you touched on it. Smith and Hurts, and stay away from their backfield.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to the next matchup, which is Cincinnati versus Denver. Looking at the Cincinnati side of the ball, Denver is allowing the 29th most points to the quarterback, the 20th most points to the running back, the 24th most points to the wide receiver, and the 32nd most points to the tight end.
So in case you didn't know, Denver's defense has been good this year. They've done very well. They have certainly had some struggles against better teams, but for the most part, they've been pretty solid. I think this is a matchup that doesn't match up well for them. I think that Cincinnati, they've got a young quarterback who's been playing very well this season. I think Burrow can put up enough points, put together enough drives. They've got a ton of weapons. Mixon is both a running and receiving weapon. They've got 3 good receivers. I think you can start Burrow in this one, even though it's a terrible matchup. I wouldn't expect a ton from him, but I think if you're grabbing someone off the waiver wire, if Burrow is on it, I think you can roll him out and not feel too bad about it. Mixon, I think you got to start him if you got him. And then beyond that, Higgins and Chase have both looked pretty great of late. I think you can probably safely roll both of those guys out, even though it's not a great matchup. And then after that, I'd probably quit looking at Cincinnati.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think I think Joe Burrow has a very safe floor this week. Might not have a super high ceiling as some of the other quarterbacks, but I think he's not going to kill your team this week. So it's all dependent on whether, like, in regards to what kind of matchup you're playing. If you're the underdog and you need a lot of points, maybe look at something that has a higher ceiling. But if you're just looking to essentially have a safe play, I think Burrow is a very safe play. Joe Mixon, he's an every week start. I honestly think the last few weeks it's been more of a T. Higgins over Jamar Chase. And I think this might be the week where it goes back. Because I think T. Higgins is probably going to see the top corner on Denver. And I think it might be T. Higgins. He might get a top corner and some safety help over the top just because he's been really good the last couple of weeks. So I think they might try and game plan for him a little bit. So yeah, but I mean, I'm happy starting either one of them, and you said it, so I can't
Yeah.
I can't agree more with that. So, all right, well, let's look at the Denver side of the ball. Cincinnati's allowing the 21st most points to the quarterback, 18th most points to the running back, 17th most points to the wide receiver, and 12th most points to the tight end.
Yeah, so offensively, things are relatively bleak in Denver. The only thing that's really been anything remotely consistent is the running back position. This week, Williams and Gordon, they've kind of cannibalized each other a lot. It seems like the coaching staff is very dedicated to that kind of 50-50 down the middle split. Can't really tell who's going to really get it either way.
When you said 50-50 split, I was really interested to see what the snap percentages were last week. Melvin Gordon had 50% of the snaps. Javonte Williams had 49. So it really is 50-50.
It's like you watch the games, it's literally almost down the middle, carry for carry, that, one gets 3, then the other gets 3. They're very much at about a 50%. And so I think either one is flex worthy. I don't think you want to put a ton of weight on the performance of either one, especially against a decent run defense. And then, outside of those two, I don't think I'm starting anyone else for Denver. You could maybe throw a dart at Fant if you're desperate for tight ends.
Yeah, I really agree with you. Honestly, I was going to say I would probably be leaning Melvin Gordon because Javonte Williams is questionable, but Melvin Gordon is also questionable. So they could,
if one doesn't play, absolutely roll the other.
yeah.
But if they both play,
they're more of a flex play than yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next matchup, which is Atlanta versus San Francisco. So looking at the Atlanta side of the ball, San Francisco is allowing the 9th most points to the quarterback, the 12th most points to the running back, 13th most points to the wide receiver, and 30th most points to the tight end. Matt Ryan, to me, is a good streaming candidate this week. I don't like to say it. It's a good matchup for him. I know he's limited with his weapons. Like his
never be another must start for me.
Yeah. But I do think he is a pretty decent streaming candidate. You're putting out Patterson no matter what. Like this is a pretty good matchup, so you can be happy putting him out there. I think it's Russell Gage, and that's about all I would want to touch at wide receiver because it is a half decent matchup. So this Russell Gage could be one of those save your lineups kind of players if you have COVID issues going into the kickoffs. So make sure you keep an eye out on him. I don't have faith in Kyle Pitts in a good matchup, and this is a bad matchup, so I'm staying away from him too.
Yeah, I have a little more faith in Pitts than you do, but not in this matchup. That's for sure. Davis is also potentially a decent start. They actually threw him the ball more than Cordero last week, and they seem to be utilizing him again. So if he gets another 3 to 5 catches, chances are he'll have a decent enough baseline to be a waiver wire flex pickup.
Yeah, he got 16 touches last week, so that's, I mean, if you're looking at a flex kind of waiver wire pickup, you can't really get much better than 16 touches.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's look at the San Francisco side of the ball. Atlanta's allowing the 2nd most points to the quarterback, 9th most to the running back, 6th most to the wide receiver, and 15th most to the tight end. I mean, I never want to stream Jimmy G just because that offense is such a zone running scheme that they rely very little on the quarterback play, and it's very few and far between where Jimmy G has a relevant fantasy game. So even though the numbers are telling you that you should start Jimmy G this week if you need a quarterback, I don't think it's a good idea. Looking at the running back position, who I'm not certain that Mitchell's going to be back this week. I know he was questionable and then ruled out last week, but I believe he's still questionable this week. He hasn't been ruled out yet. He worked on the side at practice today. If he's active, he is a smash play because Atlanta just bleeds fantasy points to the running back. If he's not active, I tend to think that they're probably going to do the same thing they did last week with Debo, and he's going to run the ball a lot. You're happy starting Debo. Obviously, he's an every week start. I think Ayuk is a great start this week, and then Kittle's also, he's matchup proof, and it's a middle of the pack matchup for him, but he's George Kittle. So play George Kittle. Don't be stupid.
Yeah, I agree with you on all of that. I think Jimmy G is just too unreliable to really. You don't want to start a guy that you have zero faith in fantasy in the playoffs. I think Mitchell, I don't have high expectations for him this week. With how long it's been kind of the setbacks with getting back from injury, I think even with the way San Francisco likes to just roll one guy and beat the crap out of him, I find it hard to believe that he's going to get more than 10 to 12 touches in this one if he plays, just based off the fact that he's had such a kind of, time coming back. But we'll see.
Yeah, and obviously if Mitchell's not in and Jeff Wilson's starting, he's a pretty good start this week too. It's just unfortunate because he's I don't know, he's a couple injuries away from being Raheem Mostert in my opinion. So
yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next matchup, which is Seattle versus LA. There's a lot of divisional games this week. Looking at the Seattle side of the ball first, the Rams are allowing the 26th most points to the quarterback, the 17th most points to the running back, 19th most points to the wide receiver, and 18th most points to the tight end.
Yeah, so Seattle last week was the game that we were kind of waiting for before we were going to say you could start Russell Wilson in any game. He actually played fairly well. The offense looked good. This week is not an easy matchup. It's a very different game. Last week they were playing Houston. This week they're playing the Rams. I don't think you start Russell Wilson this week, even though he looked really good last week.
Yeah.
It was Houston. I think the same goes for Penny. I would want to see another game before I'm going to start him against a caliber of defense like the Rams. And I think the only person that I'm really starting with any confidence this week is Lockett, just because Wilson seems to be dead on throwing the ball his direction every chance he gets at this point.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. I mean, you're probably putting Metcalf in because of what you paid for him and what your roster looks like if you have Metcalf. But, yeah, I mean, he is questionable this week. So it was foot and back injuries. So, but yeah, I'm way more confident in Tyler Lockett this week than I am in DK Metcalf. So, all right, let's look at the Rams side of the ball. Seattle is allowing the 23rd most points to the quarterback, the 6th most points to the running back, the 26th most points to the wide receiver, and the 5th most points to the tight end.
So This one, there's a lot of variables. Henderson, if he's back, what his snap count's going to actually look like. That plays a huge difference in whether or not you have a lot of value behind Sony Michelle. And then Odell, I mean, pretty much their whole receiving core has had some issues. But yeah, how many of their wide receivers are actually lacing up for this one plays a factor in Stafford's kind of level. I think you can probably assume he'll do all right, regardless, even though it's not a plus matchup. Obviously, if Cup's in the game, anytime that guy plays, you're playing him. Uh, he's just been matchup proof pretty much by definition this year. And in this one, I do think Higbee. That's right, Liam. Higbee. Higbee. I do think Higbee is a start this week at tight end.
I agree with you 100% except for Tyler Higbee, and I will never, ever put Tyler Higbee in my lineup ever again. Yeah, I do hope. I mean, like I said, the Rams facility was closed. They're having some COVID issues. There's about 5 teams in the league that have their facilities closed right now. So, but yeah, I can't really add any more to that in regards to fantasy analysis. So I'll move on to the next matchup, which is Green Bay versus Baltimore. Looking at the Green Bay side of the ball, Baltimore is allowing the 11th most points to the quarterback, the 27th most points to the running back, the 18th most points to the wide receiver, and the 4th most points to the tight end. Now, Aaron Rodgers did say that his toe injury is worse after last week, so that is something you might want to keep an eye on. He said that surgery is a last resort, so hopefully that's not going to be something that happens. Excuse me. This is a pretty decent matchup, so if you have Aaron Rodgers, you're probably rolling him out this week if he's playing. The ball has been going a lot to AJ Dillon, and it's hilarious because even though AJ Dillon is getting the ball more than Aaron Jones has scored more fantasy points than AJ Dillon because he's had like 2 touchdowns here and there, where Dillon hasn't had any touchdowns. But I honestly think that in a matchup like this, where it's pretty tough for the running back, AJ Dillon's a safer play. When it comes to Jones and Dillon, you're putting in Devontae Adams. I kind of think you could play MVS because Baltimore used to be really, really, really good against the wide receiver, and they've slowly started going down since they lost Marlon Humphrey. So I think this is a game, like, you got to look at it from the standpoint that they're not as good as they were, so options are opening up, and I think MVS is one of those options that's opening up. And then Green Bay just doesn't have a tight end, so I'm not worried about anybody playing that position on that team. So
yeah, I'm a little less excited about MVS this week, mainly just because Lazard is also seeming to get a decent amount of targets week to week. Adams is a target hog. He's been throwing the ball to the backfield a lot. I think that once you get rid of all of that, if you're not the clear-cut number 2 getting all the rest of the passes, I just don't know that there's enough left for him at the end of it, and especially against a Baltimore team that, I mean, if Lamar's playing, they're a lot more dynamic. But if Lamar's out, I think this might be a game where you see Green Bay kind of put their foot on the gas a bit and kind of grind out time.
Lazard has been blocking a lot, so they have been using him. It's almost like he's playing the slot and being a tight end. So he's a big wide receiver. Like
he's not small.
No, he's real good at blocking. They highlighted it in the game last week, so it just stuck with me.
He's really good when he wants to, but I still don't like. He's better near the line. Like he's still not a great blocker when you have him out on the outside as much. Like I've seen a couple of times where he's just flat out let guys run right around him. Like but he is essentially a small tight end in many ways, and he does block at the line a lot better.
Yeah, when it's not the small guys that can run around him.
Mhm.
All right, let's look at the Baltimore side of the ball. Green Bay is allowing the 24th most points to the quarterback, the 22nd most points to the running back, the 12th most points to the wide receiver, and the 22nd most points to the tight end. Harbaugh did say that he is hopeful that Lamar is going to play this week. If he doesn't, I don't think they're missing a lot from the running offense from the quarterback. I forget what was that. Huntley was the quarterback. Yeah, Huntley.
Yeah.
He also, like, I'm gonna put a label on it. He might be one of those COVID save your lineup kind of ads if Lamar is out. He has a very safe floor with the rushing baseline, so he is somebody that you could definitely put into your lineup in case of a COVID shutdown for your roster, essentially. This isn't a good matchup for the running back situation in Baltimore. The running back situation in Baltimore hasn't necessarily been great for fantasy. It's been good, like good to decent in good matchups. But in my opinion, I think if Jackson's out or even limited, I think they're going to be playing from behind. So you'll see a lot less of the running game from Baltimore. Hollywood and Bateman are both playable this week, in my opinion. Even though Jair Alexander was back, he was somewhat limited, and like I said, they're going to be playing from behind, so they're going to be throwing the ball. I think both those guys are solid flex plays this week, and then you're always starting Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is the number one tight end in fantasy right now. So
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it depends on who's throwing the ball, whether or not you want to look at their wide receivers. Um, I think there's still a solid enough baseline for one of them, regardless, but I don't really know which one of them
I tend
because
to lean Bateman.
I haven't seen enough of a sample size of Huntley to really say, but I would probably lean Bateman as well.
Yeah.
So for me, I think Hollywood is dependent on Lamar, whereas I think you can play Bateman either way.
All right. Well, let's move on to the next matchup, which is New Orleans versus Tampa Bay. Oddly enough, another divisional matchup. Um, looking at the New Orleans side of the ball, Tampa's allowing the 6th most points to the quarterback, 29th most points to the running back, 20th most points to the wide receiver, and 11th most points to the tight end.
Yeah, so Tampa Bay is not a great defense to play in many ways. One area they are great is for a running quarterback, which leads me to think that Taysom Hill is he's probably going to be a good start in this one. I think his running baseline should be high enough that it won't matter too much. But this is such a weird game because you have to remember what happened the last time these two teams played.
New Orleans won.
Uh, yeah, and their defense handled Tampa. So I think this one is going to go in Tampa's direction, but I think New Orleans will put up a fight, and I think a lot of that will be done with Taysom Hill on the ground, and then probably some random big plays that happen to get him points.
Probably from a no-name wide receiver.
Yeah, probably to someone that nobody has started. Uh, I think Kamara start him, but don't have the same faith that you normally do in him. If you're thinking he's going to get you a guaranteed, 15 to 25 points like he normally does, this is just not the week. Tampa is great against the run, and it's they're gonna be teeing off on Kamara as much as possible.
I agree. I Taysom Hill, like just to give you an idea of his rushing for his 2 starts this year, he had 101 yards 2 weeks ago, and then he had 73 yards last week. Like he's a super safe play with a super high ceiling in my opinion. So he's a great start this week.
Yeah.
All right, let's move over to the Tampa side of the ball. New Orleans is allowing the 12th most points to the quarterback, the 32nd most points to the running back, the 9th most points to the wide receiver, and the 26th most points to the tight end.
So most of it with Tampa Bay is you start Brady, you start Fournette, you start Godwin, you start Evans, you start Gronk. Those ones, you're starting them every week. They're your classic standbys. I think Fournette this week, he's been amazing this year. If you drafted him, congratulations, because you got him for a real good ADP for what his performance has been. But This is not a week that I think is going to be horribly favorable for him. I think he'll probably get some passes. There might be a touchdown, but I wouldn't expect him to be putting out more than 60 or 70 yards at most. And I think Tampa Bay is going to do it mostly through the air.
Yeah, I really agree there. I'm really hesitant to put Fournette in this week. But other than that, Gronk is matchup proof. That's the only other one that you're looking at where it's a tough matchup. And yeah, Brady's QB1 in fantasy right now, and Evans and Godwin are obviously his favorite targets, and really only targets the wide receiver right now.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the last matchup of the week, which is Minnesota against Chicago. Looking at the Minnesota side of the ball, Chicago is allowing the 3rd most points to the quarterback, the 13th most points to the running back, the 4th most points to the wide receiver, and the 25th most points to the tight end. Kirk Cousins is an awesome start this week, in my opinion. He's gonna have we talked about it with Hill, not necessarily same talent as Hill when I'm talking about the same rushing. He doesn't run, but it's the super safe floor with a really high ceiling that I mentioned. He's got great wide receiver to throw into in Jefferson. Osborne's shown that he's capable. He still has Dalvin Cook. Madison's probably going to be out this week with COVID because he was on the COVID list. But they're bleeding points at quarterback, wide receiver, and running back. So you're going to see a lot of that translate into points for Cousins. Cook, you start him every week. Jefferson, you start him every week. Conklin, I'm not playing this week, unfortunately. I lean towards it being an Osborne week.
I think I've heard there is a chance Thielen's going to be back this week.
I'd be really surprised if he was back.
He's a tough guy.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Wasn't it like a 3 to 4 week timeline for his ankle injury though? Like coming back after 1 week, it would be I'd be super surprised / impressed.
Yeah, I mean, 1 week is realistically 2 weeks.
Yeah,
but
true.
But it's still it's a very fast timeline. But I have heard he is questionable. So if Thielen's back, I think it's hard to see him being back at 100%.
Yeah,
and I think he drops Osborne's relevancy while not increasing his own.
That's a very, very good point. Okay, did you have anything else to add to the Minnesota side of the ball, or you want to talk about Chicago now?
Talk about Chicago.
Let's talk about Chicago. All right, so just looking at the Chicago side, Minnesota is allowing the 4th most points to the quarterback, the 10th most points to the running back, the most points to the wide receiver and the 23rd most points to the tight end. Justin Fields is also a fantastic play this weekend. Minnesota is actually allowing quite a bit of yards rushing to the quarterback. So I think Fields is going to be super safe floor, very high ceiling again. Whenever you're wanting to find a streaming quarterback, that's what you're looking for, in my opinion. David Montgomery, pretty good matchup. He's honestly probably in everyone's lineup if you have him every week, anyways. Darnell Mooney, to me, and I think he's an awesome play this week. He seems to be the favorite receiver for Fields. For some reason, Fields cannot hit Allen Robinson. Like, Blake Bortles was able to hit Allen Robinson enough times to make him the leading receiver in the NFL when they played for Jacksonville. For some reason, he cannot throw the ball to Allen Robinson. So I'm not, even though it's a great matchup, I'm not looking to play Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it probably also merits to note that I wouldn't play Komet as well, just because sometimes people do. But yeah, I think the main thing is the big three, Montgomery, Fields, and Mooney, and then kind of just leave it alone, especially because it's a Monday game. You may end up having to grab somebody because you had a desperation. Holy crap, nobody's playing. This person isn't playing, and you just dropped out a slot. If you end up in a situation like that, I think Robinson, well, he's not the best start. He's on a lot of waiver wires. Nobody seems to pick him up. And he's still Allen Robinson. So if you find yourself with a flex or wide receiver slot that you don't know who you can possibly put in it, because everybody's already taken, I think Robinson isn't the worst start in this one.
For me, like with Robinson, the issue that I have with Robinson is I feel like we've been saying he still is Allen Robinson all year long.
I'm saying if you are desperate,
Yeah.
because
No.
you're not getting Mooney, you're not getting Thielen, you're not getting Jefferson, you're probably not getting Osborne because he's been taken off of a lot of waiver wires.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at who am I getting outside of those four guys, the next one I would take would be Robinson.
All right. Well, that does it for the matchups tonight. Next, we will jump into the start and sits of the week. Don't worry, we do have Zach start and sits for the week. I will lead it off here with my QB start of the week. I went with Kirk Cousins. I talked about it. Super safe floor, super high ceiling. So great matchup against the Bears. Love Kirk Cousins this week.
Yeah, and I went with basically the other quarterback in the exact same game with Fields. As we talked about, super good floor, very high ceiling, should have lots of rushing points. Great start.
All right, and Zach's quarterback start of the week was Tua Tagovailoa, who I also really like this week, so I do agree with him there.
Absolutely.
All right, and do you want to lead it off with the sits there?
All right, so mine this week is Goff, which sounds weird, but he has actually been a little more relevant of late. I think this is a game he's up against the Arizona defense. They are punishing quarterbacks, and I just do not think this is going to be a positive game for him.
All right, and I sat Trevor Lawrence. I do not have a whole lot of faith in Trevor Lawrence anymore. I really was hoping he was going to do something last week, and he ended up throwing 4 interceptions last week. So I think it's time to get off the Trevor Lawrence bus, and I think it is a lot to do with the fact that Urban Meyer is a terrible coach. So
if you want a good example of that, look up the article on him kicking his kicker.
What?
He kicked their old kicker in practice. He just walked over and kicked him while he was stretching. And
Like the Jags kicker when he was the coach in university.
no, the Jags' old kicker.
Like Josh Lambo?
Yeah,
That guy's a hero to that team. You kicked him?
he just walked over and kicked him because he wasn't playing well enough.
What the hell is wrong with you? Oh my god. He should have been fired after that. All right. Before I get too far into it, do you want to share Zach's sit for quarterback?
So Zach's sit was Cam Newton. We all know how I feel about Cam Newton. This is an awful, awful matchup, and he's going to probably be terrible.
Probably. All right. So running back starts for the week. I have Sony Michelle. And I've said Sony Michelle because it is probably Sony Michelle or Henderson if Henderson's back. But I lean towards Sony Michelle because I think Henderson coming back from COVID is still going to be pretty limited. COVID and an injury. So I think he's still going to be pretty limited. They've leaned on Sony quite a bit, and he's been pretty effective. So I think he's a pretty good start this week.
Fair enough. I went with Gaskin or Duke Johnson. This is mainly just matchup related.
And the fact that
Jets,
you love Myles Gaskin.
I'm also willing to say Duke Johnson if Gaskin isn't in. That's how much faith I have in their matchup this week. The Jets are absolutely terrible against the run. And if it's Gaskin, that's amazing. He should easily be a top 10 running back this week. There's nobody behind him other than Duke. And it's an awful, awful run defense he's playing against. If it's Duke Johnson, I would temper my expectations a little more, but I think he's still very worthwhile to pick up and flex.
Yeah, he would be one of those COVID savers, in my opinion, Duke Johnson.
Yeah.
Zach's start of the week, and I'm only giving him one, and I'm choosing. I'm assuming it's Chase Edmonds is who he's saying, and I think it's probably to do a lot with the fact that James Conner went down with an injury. So at the end, the very last play of the game against the Rams. So I think he's referring to the fact that Chase Edmonds is probably going to get the bulk of the carries going into this week.
If he's back, if not, as we touched on earlier, Eno. Now you got me saying. Now you got me saying.
I know
Eno.
It's my fault. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
All right, so let's move on to our sits. You want to start with yours?
Yeah, sure. I'll start with mine. I kind of talked about it earlier. I'm not starting Devonta Freeman. Baltimore, tough matchup for the running backs, and the running back room, if you want to call it, or whatever, for fantasy in Baltimore. It's not been great, so I definitely think in a tough matchup, this is where you want to find Devonta Freeman on your bench. So
fair enough. My sit is all Detroit running backs. There's a possibility Williams might be back. There's a possibility Swift might be back. If not, Reynolds or Iguabuye. But
that was a really good stab at it. I give you props for that one.
Thank you. But I don't think it matters who's back and who's not. I think all Detroit running backs should be sat this week.
Yeah, I agree.
And Zach's sit was Mike Davis. As we touched on earlier, I don't agree with this.
Yeah.
But that's his prerogative.
We let everybody have their own opinion on the show. So, all right, who you starting at wide receiver this week?
So my start this week, just coming off that great start last one, I am starting Berrios. I think that there's really nobody else. He had the most targets on the team last week. Chances are they're going to be throwing. Miami is very susceptible at wide receiver. And I think there is going to be a decent amount of points through the air for the Jets. And I think Berrios is by far the best chance to swallow up those points.
All right. I have Darnell Mooney, and we talked about it. I think, honest to God, I think we could end up with having Mooney as a top 3 wide receiver this week. Just the matchup is so good, and he's the guy on the team. So I think he's going to get a lot of points. He's a great start this week and a great matchup. Zach's start of the week, which I also like, is Brandon Ayuk. So good matchup. You're probably going to see Debo. If Mitchell's out, you're going to see Debo in the backfield quite a bit more, and I think that's going to turn into more points for Ayuk. So I think it's a great start as well.
Agreed.
All right, who you sitting?
I'm sitting Williams. I
just
think
to clarify,
that,
Mike Williams.
Yes, that does need to be clarified.
So many Williams.
I think it's not a great matchup up against Kansas City. They have been decent against a wide receiver, and I think that it is also, he's been struggling with injury, as I touched on yesterday. He's not a good player when he's got a Q tag generally, and I think this is one where he doesn't deliver much to you.
Yeah, and I'm sitting DJ Moore. It's a tough matchup. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Cam Newton this week, and I think it's not gonna turn into fantasy points for any of his playmakers. So
fair enough. And Zach sat Michael Pittman. As I mentioned yesterday, I don't agree with this, but I definitely see the logic behind it. He is up against New England, and their defense has been pretty punishing.
On a Saturday, pay attention to your lineups. All right, who are you starting at tight end this week?
Higby.
I don't want to talk about it. I just asked that question so I can cut you off while you're saying his name.
The Hig Beast.
No.
As I mentioned, I think with everything going on in their receiver room right now, it's a great matchup for him. I think this is a week where he provides you some actual decent value. And I think it's a rare week where I can put him on this list and piss Liam off.
We're supposed to help people. That's the whole point of this show, is we're supposed to help people, and you're legitimately trying to get people out of the playoffs in
I'm
the
giving
first
him a week winner tight end.
All right, my start is Mike Gesicki. I think he's, like we talked about it yesterday. There is talent. It is a good matchup. Tua's going to find him a bunch this week. Tight end landscape sucks. Gesicki's a great start this week. So, wow, I did not see this. I am somewhat surprised by this because I know he doesn't like this guy.
Yeah, I think we almost need Zach here to explain himself.
I don't even know how to explain this.
My guess is that he's looking at the fact that Arizona right now just lost its best weapon.
Yeah.
And Hopkins is a complete target hog.
Yeah.
When he's in the game, and Arizona is not that deep at wide receiver. So my guess is that's why he went with Zach Ertz.
And if you haven't, I was going to say,
we haven't actually said his name
yet. If you haven't figured it out yet, Zach's start is Zach Ertz, and he has in the past shared hit. Oh, you know what's absolutely hilarious? He put Ertz in the spreadsheet for his start, and then he put ... next to it. Do you see it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's perfect.
I don't think it's a terrible start. I think if he's going to have a big beast game, this is probably the game to do it. Chances are Arizona isn't going to be as effective running the ball, so they may still be throwing a little bit later in the game. But yeah,
I mean,
It's
I
not
don't
terrible.
hate the start either. I think I'm just completely
Yeah.
shocked at the fact that it's Zach's start. So,
Yeah.
all right. I'll lead the sits off here for tight end, just because I have absolutely no logic
Contradicts. Yeah.
or analysis to any of this. It's just completely personal. My sit is Tyler Higbee, as it is every week. So that's about it.
Yeah. So mine actually has some foundation of logic. I'm sitting.
Wow, that hurts. That got deep.
You're welcome.
That got real deep.
So I'm sitting Tyler Conklin. I think that Chicago's not a great matchup, and I think they'll probably be leaning on the run a lot. And yeah, I just don't see a lot of targets going his way. And then Zach's was Pitts, and we talked about Pitts earlier. Not a great matchup, not been getting a lot of targets. Tough to rely on, even in good matchups. He's a good set this week.
All right, and who is your defensive start for the week?
I went with Indy.
Love it.
I think Indianapolis has been playing really phenomenal defense of late. They've got their corners back. I think they are going to stack the box a bit and make New England actually try and throw the ball further than 10 yards down the field. And I think that is a real weak spot for a rookie quarterback that has not thrown 3 passes in a winning game before this year.
Yeah.
So I think this is a week where we get to really see the metal and what he's made of. And I think it's not going to be good for him.
I agree. And my start of the week at defense is Miami. They actually have a pretty good playoff schedule too. So, and they've been playing a lot better as of late. So playing the Jets. Jets are prone to turnovers. Again, rookie quarterback. So I think you can be super happy putting Miami in your lineup this week. Zach's start for defense was the 49ers. They are playing
Atlanta.
Atlanta. I don't hate it because I mean Atlanta's offense definitely has taken a bit of a hit this year, but I definitely like ours better. And that's the shot I'll take.
Agreed.
Zach. All right, so let's end the show off with bold predictions for this week. I will just get Zach's out of the way, and then I will let you jump right into yours. Actually, no, we'll go to mine so that we split because yours and Zach's are very similar because they're both running backs. So I'll split up the running backs essentially. Zach is saying that Joe Mixon will be outside the top 24 running backs this week. Now, I could definitely see it being a possibility, but I really hope not.
I think the only way Mixon is outside the top 24 is with an injury. And
that's why I was saying I really hope not.
Yeah, like I think that's realistically the only way that happens. The running back landscape is not that deep that I could see that potentially happening. And it's not a terrible matchup for him. So I think this is way more bold than he needed to go to be bold.
I would have said like outside the top 15.
Yeah, like top 15 for a clear-cut wide receiver or running back one who's a start every week. Outside the top 15 is still something relatively bold to say.
Yeah, he went real bold. All right, I said that, and you know what, I'm the only one that went with a positive bold prediction this week. I think I was the only one who went with a negative a couple weeks ago, and so it's nice to be on the flip side. Tua is going to be a top 5 quarterback this week, going up against the Jets. They have some issues at the running back position with just like health wise for Miami. But I think Tua is going to get a pretty decent amount of rushing yards if they're having issues at the running back position, because I think he will be more prone to run. And I just think that there's a lot of top quarterbacks that have actually pretty tough matchups this week. So I think top 5 is definitely doable for Tua this week.
It's certainly not probable, but definitely achievable, which is the definition of a bold prediction.
Yeah.
Um, I went with mine. Zach got his in after, and I think kind of tried to upstage me.
Yeah, no
I
kidding,
said,
hey?
yeah, I said Kamara is not a top 15 running back this week. He's got an awful matchup, and I think we're going to see a lot of Taysom Hill outside running the ball, and I don't think Kamara is going to get the points he needs to be a running back one. It's 15's a stretch, but I don't think he's a top 10 guy at all.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree. Not kind of. I do agree with your take on Kamara this week. It's a tough matchup. Tampa Bay is really good against the run. All right, well, that wraps up the show for this week. For tonight, and actually for the week, yeah, too. I guess I was right on that one. Hopefully, everybody has made the playoffs. First of all, I know that there's a lot of teams and a lot of people that probably didn't make the playoffs, but I'm just trying to be positive here, everyone, especially in the day that we live in right now. So hopefully everybody's made the playoffs. Good luck to everyone in round one. Hopefully you're on your way to round two. If you have any questions, you can always email us at potbellypigskinfantasyfootball@gmail.com. Do not forget to subscribe. Please subscribe to the channel. Tell everyone you know to subscribe to the channel. It would really help us out. And also you can catch us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. All right. Well, again, good luck and have yourself a good football weekend.
See ya.